All right, hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Tyler King, the college sports reporter for the Denver Gazette. We're back with another college football preview-ish video today. If you missed it up on the channel from yesterday, I talked with DNVR's Jake Schwanitz, my good friend. We previewed Colorado versus Delaware, although it was mostly talking about the Buffs, given the nature of the beast. The Buffs are 3-touchdown favorites and should be able to take care of business against a former FCS opponent, now recently promoted, moved up to FBS this season, but still should be a win for the Buffs over at Folsom Field tomorrow. And similarly, going to be talking not about a game in particular this week, one I won't be at. I won't be able to make it up in time from Boulder to Fort Collins for Colorado State and Northern Colorado, which kicks off at 5 p.m. The Rams home opener at Canvas Stadium. Should be a fun environment. But we're going to really preview the month ahead for CSU as they have a couple games left here in the month of September to wrap up the non-conference schedule before Mountain West play starts. So we're not going to talk really a ton about tomorrow's game, but just kind of the month as a whole. And to do so, we've got the great Kevin Lytle from the Coloradoan, covers CSU just about as well as anybody. Kevin, I appreciate you coming on. You were at the season opener in Seattle last week as CSU. We kept it close against Washington for much of that game, but things kind of fell apart at the end. And I was so close to my prediction. I think I had 38-20 Washington, and it was a 38-21 win for the Huskies there. Just kind of your overall takeaways from that season opener, which kind of went how I expected. And then I thought the Rams would show some things. It would be a little bit different, or a lot different than last year's kind of bludgeoning at Texas, and just kind of sets them up for an interesting month here.
Yeah, definitely. Likewise, it kind of went how I thought it would. My score is 34-16, so pretty similar. I thought CSU would, hang in, land some punches, and eventually Washington would kind of outman them, and that's basically what happened. But yeah, I think overall, there's some frustrations you can have if you're a CSU fan over some things here and there, but the big picture, I think, was there was certainly nothing from that game that, I think raises huge alarm bells about, this team being able to compete in the Mountain West. Obviously, Jalen Dupree looked good. The Taj Bullock wrinkle looked good. Defense obviously gave up a lot of yards, but they did create some pressures. Damon Williams is probably by far the best quarterback CSU is going to face this season. They're not going to see another guy that can escape pressure like him. So really, I think there's some good things. Obviously, some stuff to clean up, but overall, nothing from that changed my outlook for CSU and the ability to compete in the Mountain West. And my biggest takeaway is I was super jealous and had FOMO of sailgating.
That did look like a lot of fun. It's a unique thing in college football. I mean, that's one of the more gorgeous settings. You were telling me earlier this week when I saw you up in Fort Collins that it just kind of felt like a soccer kind of stadium with how steep the stands are. Yeah. And you obviously got the great backdrop there too, looking over the water. So everyone who lives in Seattle and covers UW regularly, we're always jealous of those people. But kind of back to this CSU team, I think what was most impressive to me about, regardless of the score and the fact that it wasn't 56-0 like last year at Texas or whatever the score ended up being in that game, was just the way it looked. Like the 2-minute drive at the end of the first half to tie the game was super impressive, and then that first drive to start the third quarter, obviously the defense gives up the touchdown, but then the offense goes right down the field and responds. And I thought all of the scoring drives they had were decently long, over 50 yards. They weren't just like cashing in on some turnover luck in short fields. They were going down the field and doing it, in difficult situations. Like I said, with the 2-minute drill, scoring in about a minute and a half there to tie the game up right before the break. You mentioned Jalen Dupree. Obviously, he was great. Had I think like 85 yards on the ground and a touchdown. Jackson Warren was really good in his Rams debut. I think they were disappointed, not to have him on the field last year, even if he was still kind of getting used to the position. But it feels like now he's really settled in. And when you face a team like Washington, like Jay Norvell said, has a couple, potentially future NFL cornerbacks, that's going to be tough for your wide receivers. And Jackson Warren was able to take advantage. Just how impressive was he, and how important could that dynamic between him and Braden Fowler-Nicolosi be throughout the season?
Huge. I mean, you would never know watching him or watching that game that he's not only never played a game of FBS football, but he's played less than one full season at any level of tight end. I mean, he is about as new to the position as you can be. And that's where obviously he did not want double shoulder surgery last year. That was not ideal. But I do think there's a way that did help if it gave him a pretty good runway of, classroom time, if you will, to learn the position. Obviously, coming from the quarterback position, he knew, quarterbacks know what everyone has to do. So he knew that part of it too. But he just looks so smooth. Obviously, size is size, and that, showed. His hands look, he seems to be able to catch everything. So he was exactly what we kind of thought he would be. I know it's one game. Don't give him the Mackey Award just yet, but he looked really good. And I think it's really going to help those receivers. Yeah, they were basically shut out. I think it was 8 catches for 85 yards for the receiving group as a whole, which is obviously nowhere near good enough. But I think those were, probably NFL level corners, which CSU won't see a lot of. And then 2, while, we're high on Tommy Maher and Jordan Ross, they're super green. I mean, Jordan Ross had 15 catches last year. Tommy had 4. He matched his season total last week with 4 catches. So they're going to have some growing pains as well. But now that, there's more film on Jackson, you would imagine he'll probably get more pretty good film on against UNC. Teams are going to have to start figuring out what to do with that, so drop a safety in to help out or whatever that may be. That should help those receivers get a little bit more space down the road too. So I think it's really big for this offense, and frankly, all offenses. Having a good tight end is really big. I mean, you saw how it helped CSU a couple of years ago with Dallin Holker. I think Jackson Warren's going to have an impact. And Rocky Beers didn't really do much, and honestly wasn't on the field as much as I thought he would be against Washington, but he's going to have moments as well. So I think that's really going to help the receivers. The more Jackson gets involved, it's going to help the receivers. And it seems like him and Braden, I know they were roommates last year. I think they still are. I need to double check that, but they seem to have pretty good connection. And I mean, why wouldn't you as a quarterback? The dude's 6'8", like he's going to box people out.
Yeah, he's just it's honestly surprising that he was a quarterback. I mean, he probably had a pretty ridiculous arm growing up and then throughout high school, but he's a great athlete. That was super impressive to watch as well for Jackson. And the other thing that I think will help the offense as a whole is the run game too, because we mentioned Jalen Dupree. I thought the offensive line was, as impressive as you can be against a Big Ten school that has some decent size up front. They've got Washington had some good playmakers at linebacker. We didn't even get to see some of the other guys as much. I think Lloyd Avon had a nice kickoff return. Didn't see a ton of him, offensively. And then Justin Marshall as well. We've all seen what he can do over the last couple of years. So I think that running game could really help this CSU team become maybe the most balanced they've been offensively under Jay Norvell, because obviously they were passing the ball a ton when he got here with the air raid stuff. It wasn't really working. Last year, they really leaned into the run game and kind of get away from the explosive passing game. And it feels like this might be the first time under Jay that they could have, a pretty balanced offense that can beat teams in multiple ways.
Yeah, and that's what it was last week. I think it was like 53% pass or something like that. Obviously, it's going to swing a little bit late in the game when you're losing. Yeah. But especially when you throw in the Taj Bullock wrinkle, if he's going to have some carries, and it's a different type of running, if you will. It's not just a handoff. So yeah, I think they have a diversity of weapons, and it's just going to come down to, how does Braden use them? Does he make the right reads? Obviously, O-line, still a question mark a bit because they don't have ton of experience, but I agree with you. I thought they played well. I thought their run block was particularly good. So that's a really encouraging sign. I think even though they're a little green, maybe it's probably a more athletic group than they had last year. So they showed well game 1, which is really, really encouraging because that was a big question I had. So yeah, I think, if this offense clicks how it should, or how they have it designed, it should be, really balanced and a lot of different guys. You'll have one week where it's a big Dupree game, another week where it's a big Jackson Warren game, another week where it's a big J. Ross game. It should be pretty spread out week to week.
Yeah, and now just looking ahead to this month, is obviously the Rams have 3 home games this month. They play, like I said, UNC tomorrow evening at Canvas Stadium. They have the bye week following that, and then they come back for back-to-back games against UTSA and Washington State. Like I said, both in Fort Collins. It's a big month for the Rams to kind of show that the Washington game, like we were talking about, was as impressive as we believe, because they got to take care of business in these games if they want to, continue to prove that they could be Mountain West contenders. The conference as a whole hasn't been super impressive to start the season. Obviously, with Boise most notably losing in pretty big fashion at South Florida. Some of the other teams that you think might compete either haven't played anybody or haven't been overly impressive. So this is an important month for the Rams to take care of business. Kevin, what's the biggest thing you're looking for, not just tomorrow, but this month going forward, to prove for these Rams to prove that they are, like we talked about, Mountain?
Yeah, obviously, the UNC game is kind of what we know what it is. CSU just has to take care of business in that one. And then the bye week, it's a weird time for a bye week, but it may work out because the next two games are really big. UTSA and Washington State. The UTSA, maybe not the biggest name, but that's a huge game. That's a good program. They played Texas A&M pretty well. They played Texas State this weekend. So, that's very interesting in a lot of reasons, kind of relative to CSU. So that's going to be a really tough game. I think it's good for CSU to have a bye, to get ready for that one. To me, that's one of the biggest swing games of the season. You win that one, and you're feeling really good. Washington State week 1 didn't look very good, but again, I keep saying this in games like that, there's an extra evaluation going on because that's a future conference foe, and you have them at home. CSU's played Washington State, a number of times in recent years, and it's been pretty ugly. It cannot
no
be
Cam
ugly.
Ward for Wazoo this
time.
Yeah,
no Cam Ward for sure. That's going to be a little different. No Batir. But yeah, I mean, it's going to be hard, but in a lot of ways, I think CSU needs a 3-0 September at home. Especially that UTSA, I think is going to be hard. But if Jay Norvell said championship DNA in this locker room. If you're going to do that, you take care of business at home against kind of similar level teams. So big month, really big month for CSU. I think if CSU does go 3-0 in those, ton of energy surging into conference play, both obviously in the locker room, but within the fan base as well, because like you say, it's super early, but the Mountain West looks very gettable.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. And I agree with what you said about UTSA kind of being the swing game for the season, because that, while they're not a high profile opponent, like Wazoo might stick out to you on the schedule, but I think UTSA is probably unquestionably better. Obviously they got beat pretty good by Texas A&M last week. That's a good team. But Wazoo barely beat Idaho at home, and that was a weird kind of game in Pullman, as they often are. But yeah, I think this, like I said, this is definitely not the same Wazoo team that the Rams played in 22 and 23. Obviously no Cam Ward. Many different coaching changes have happened since then up there for the Cougars. And that UTSA game, old friend Owen McCown, a guy that I covered with the Buffs during his freshman season back in 2022, which feels like a long time ago. He'll be coming to making his return to the state. That'll be interesting. And like you said, it all sets up into Mountain West play at the start of October, which is a pretty, I would say it's a pretty favorable run to start conference play. You obviously look at the final two games of the season, and you see at Boise State and home against Air Force, and those are obviously two huge games. But the Rams have a pretty easy-ish runway to start Mountain West play with at San Diego State on a Friday night. That'll be a tricky game just given the late night kickoff, and on a Friday night on a short week. And then you've got two of the more intriguing teams in the Mountain West with Fresno State and Hawaii coming to Fort Collins. And the Rams have talked about how they last year took a big step forward in defending their home turf, and they want to do that again this season. Like all of that is going to be set up by what happens the rest of this month. So it's going to be fascinating. One other thing I wanted to ask you before I get you out of here is just defensively, what are you looking to see from this group? Because obviously a lot was made about Tyson Summers coming over and becoming the defensive coordinator this offseason, and the chaotic nature that he plays with. That was obviously always going to be a tough task in week 1 against, a really, really high powered offense. Jed Fish is a great coach at Washington, and they've got a lot of star power. Like you said, Damon Williams, the quarterback, he was a 5-star guy, and you can see why. And Jonah Coleman, who I remember watching in Arizona, is a really good player, and is just a monster. It's kind of a men among boys situation with him going against some of those CSU defenders. But defensively, what will be the keys for you for seeing the progress and that this Rams defense is on track? Because like Jay has talked about many times, the last couple of weeks, they really only had one returning starter on defense. And while there are some guys that, have gotten used to playing with this defense now, whether it was experience with Tyson at other stops or, just being in Fort Collins for a couple of years now, it's still kind of a group that's getting used to playing with each other. Like what are you looking for to see from that unit?
Yeah, I mean, pressure and turnovers are the big thing because that's what this defense is built to do. So I think there can be some yards gained against them, maybe some big plays, but they need to create big plays themselves. Saw hints of that in the Washington game. I mean, CSU only had 17 sacks last year, and they had 2 last week. I think they created pretty good amount of pressure. It's just there were some of those pressures that 11 out of your 12 games it ends in a sack, but against Damon Williams, it ends in a 20-yard gain for the opponent. So they had some pressures. I mean, I did not have Lamondre Joe down as my sack leader after game 1, but he got 1.5. He jokingly said I think jokingly, maybe not. He said he wants 10 this year. So you got to get pressures and got to get the ball out, especially against a team like UNC. But moving forward, I think that's what you have to see. It's I saw the hot takes, people wanted to hit the panic button during the Washington game, but like you said, that's a pretty dynamic set of players. They're not going to see a running back like Coleman, except for maybe at Boise, probably not though. Maybe UNLV's back, but otherwise he's going to be the best. Damon Williams, I'm sure, is the best quarterback they'll face. So you get that benefit too. So get that defense clicking. You want to get Donut going. He did have the fumble recovery off the kind of muff snap there, but get him in the sack book. Gabe Jones going down is a big bummer. And I think that does hurt them. I think they've built the depth they need there. We're going to find out, but that one does hurt. But you just got to see, I mean, chaos is the best word for it. And chaos is supposed to mean sacks and turnovers and tackles for loss.
The one guy I wanted to ask specifically about was Owen Long, because he kind of had a star-making performance and just kind of being all over the place in the Washington game. And he's a guy that you and I talked a lot about, and Justin Michael talked about all throughout fall camp of being a breakout star for this team. Was he even better than maybe you expected him to be in that Washington game? It feels like he's going to be a guy that they're going to have to pry teams away from trying to poach him, after this season.
Yeah, he was excellent. I think he's going to be a great fit in this defense. A real sideline game, especially that first half. I noticed it, and Norvell on Monday even said, man, I knew he was having a good game. Then you go back and watch the tape, and holy cow, every single play it was Owen Long in the first half. I talked to Clint Sintum, the linebackers coach. Said, he may be gassed out a bit in the second half, which I think a lot of that defense did, as CSU couldn't hold the ball offensively, but he played really well. He's a leader type. Sintum was telling me that when he had all the linebackers over to his house, when Sintum got hired after they left, his wife said, "What? Who is this? That one kid? He must have been a senior." And Clint goes, "Nope, that's at that point he was still in his freshman year, spring ball of his freshman year. So he just is one of those guys that carries himself very maturely. Really good playmaker. 13 tackles last week. If you project that out over 13 games, as assuming a bowl game, that would have him in CSU's top 3 in single season tackles all time. Now, is he going to have 13 tackles a game? I don't know, but Owen Long is absolutely going to be a star.
All right, before I get you out of here, Kevin, just give me a quick prediction for the rest of this month, because this is probably the last time I'll talk about CSU until after these non-conference games and getting ready. Probably be back to talk about this team, right before the start of Mountain West play. But just you said if they want to prove themselves as Mountain West contenders, they have to go 3-0 this month. Do you think they can get that done?
I think they definitely get 2. I feel pretty good about that. And 2-2 wouldn't be a disaster. That wouldn't in the season or ruin the season. I would love to answer this question after watching UTSA Texas State on Saturday, but I suppose that's not an option. Right now, I'm going to cautiously lean towards saying CSU can do that. Maybe not. That's a little softer than a hard guarantee, but I do think that they have the ability and weapons to do that.
Yeah, I had them at 8-4 before the start of the season with a 2-2 start, and I said
Same.
They would split the UTSA Washington State games. Although now Washington State has not looked
Washington State looked worse than I thought they would.
Yeah, I was
again week 1, but still.
Yeah, those will be interesting games, and I had them as with 2 losses in Mountain West play, and I think that could be I think that should be the bare minimum for the maximum, I should say, for this group, just based off of early showings from Mountain West play. So exciting times up in Fort Collins, and I think this is going to be a fun month, especially up at Canvas. They've got a lot planned, which you've written about this week. Some of the new game day additions as well. Should be a fun couple Saturdays with the environment and getting more fans in the stadium. That place is really fun when it's packed out and stuff. So I'm not going to be there this week, but hoping to get up there once this month. So I appreciate you coming on, Kevin, to talk all things CSU.
You bet. Thanks for having me, Tyler.
All right, that'll do it from today's video. Like I said, thanks again to Kevin for coming on. Make sure to go follow his work over on Twitter and at the Coloradoan. Nobody covers CSU as well as Kevin does, and just kind of the day-to-day stuff. And he's going to be up there, like I said, for the games that I won't be at this month. And like I said, also on the channel right now is this Colorado-Delaware game preview with Jake Schwanitz from DNVR, talking all things Buffs and kind of what to expect tomorrow afternoon at Folsom Field. The game I will be at with full coverage of that coming after the game on the channel as well. Recap video and then full coverage in Sunday's Denver Gazette. And make sure, as always, to check out our game day section tomorrow at denvergazette.com. I'm going to have full preview coverage of both of the games up in Boulder and Fort Collins. So thanks everybody again for watching, and stay tuned for what's next.